Good evening, friends. We're going to try and do this in one take. Um, we're drinking the peach tea flavored water today for a special occasion because today I finished The Hero of Ages, which is the third book of the first Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. And I think I may have mentioned that I read Mistborn. It was one of my favorite books of last year, but I've continued. I read The Well of Ascension, which is book 2, and now I have finished book 3, The Hero of Ages. And let me just say that this might be one of my favorite fantasy series of all time. So I'm just going to take a little bit of time today to just kind of gush about it. We're going to go all in spoilers. Here's the non-spoiler review. Okay, so it's really good. You should read it. Okay, there you go. I mean, I think at this point, for me, it's like almost not required fantasy reading, but like, oh, you haven't read Mistborn? That's kind of crazy. You know what I mean? Um, and so I would highly suggest consuming it. Book 1 is it was my here's the thing. Okay, book 1, I was like, man, book 1 is definitely my favorite. It's a really good standalone story. It's I love the character of Kelsier. I love Vin. Really cool. And then I got to book 2 and I read that. I was like, oh my gosh, I love what they did with Elend. I love the whole scenario of all these armies sitting outside of his city. How are we gonna, and then book 3 just takes everything off the rails. It is like, okay, now we're talking about gods and stuff. It is, and then the ending. Oh man, I almost teared up. It was one of the most satisfying endings I think that I've ever experienced. Um, Purely bittersweet, but I don't think that Sanderson could have ended it in a better way, in my opinion. Anyways, so there you go. There's your non-spoiler review. Dig it. Let's get into my like deep thoughts about each book. So first off is, the Final Empire. And I am currently, this is kind of interesting because I started reading Mistborn after I started my book. Okay, so my book actually has some similar themes to the first Mistborn um book, where Vin has to go and pretend to be Valette, Lord Renew's like niece from far away, and pretend in court, blah blah blah. There is a big theme of my book where somebody has to pretend to be a royal, aka the main character. um However, mine goes in a completely different direction than the Final Empire, so that's also good. But but it's interesting that I don't know, I started my book and then started reading Mistborn. And so I also knew that when writing my book too, I was like, okay, I should probably not do this because that's very similar to how Mistborn goes. But that whole premise is really, really good. I like the introduction of Elend, and let me tell you what, in book 1, I was not like the biggest fan of Elend. I'm like, he's kind of a I mean, well, when you're comparing everybody else in the book to Elend, Elend is the worst one because you got like Breeze, who's freaking cool. I love Breeze's attitude, drinking wine all the time. Vin is a BA protagonist that you really want to root for, even though she's like super damaged. And I really love Kelsier, his relationship with Vin. Because one of my favorite things that I don't know, I like to do is encourage people to be their best selves and to be greater than I would be ultimately. um I really find that encouraging people is important, and the relationship that Kelsier has with Vin, where he's just trying to build her up to become even better than he is, throughout the entire first book, is a really, really cool relationship, and I loved watching it develop. Um, and I think that Kelsier is not a perfect character, which I love too. I love having like the flaws. Like Kelsier is a smart aleck, and he's like cocky, but even to the point where like it's kind of almost frustrating for his friends because he's got these big plans, but he's a dreamer. I don't know. I really dug the Final Empire. The Lord Ruler is a really cool character, and but I just remember also too, like when it opens up and starts talking about the ash mounts and the ash everywhere, like rain and all the weird stuff. I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this book. Like, I don't know if this is. But comparing the opening image of Mistborn to the final image of the Hero of Ages, wow, that is just absolutely incredible. Um, and we'll get to there in a moment. But yeah, so I think that's my thoughts on Final Empire. Let's go on to Well of Ascension. Yeah, when I finished that one, I was like, oh my gosh, how did they make it? How do you make it even better than the Final Empire? I didn't think it was going to be possible. Now, Well of Ascension is definitely not a standalone story like Mistborn could be, because it really sets up book three. However, I thought that I guess not a plot. I don't know. So there's the ruin storyline about, like, Vin convinces herself that she is the hero of ages, and she has to go to the Well of Ascension to free the power. So there's that storyline, which was like okay. That one's not my favorite, but the other storyline about Elend, um, becoming king and trying to deal with the politics of his father's army outside the gate, and then this other guy's army outside the gate, and then there's monsters coming, and everybody in the castle's basically starving. We got to figure out what to do. All of that stuff I super duper dug, especially too because I like that character development. The character of Tindwyl coming in and just kind of telling Elend what the frick to do, um, in order to become the king that he is supposed to be, um, is really really interesting. And the idea of Elend trying to juggle everything, it goes throughout the second and the third book as well. Um, I don't know. I feel like that's relatable too because like sometimes I feel like I gotta put on a bunch of different hats. Which one is the real Noah? You know what I mean? And so I kind of enjoyed that storyline as well. Trying to think anything else super interesting in book two. The moment where Vin jumps across the field with the big Kolos sword and slices off Venture's head. Or right? Or was it Venture's head? I'm pretty sure. She kills somebody. That was crazy. That was absolutely crazy. All right. Oh my gosh. That image will be in my brain forever. I just absolutely love that that image that Sanderson paints there is just so incredible. And then let's move on to the Hero of Ages. One I just finished. Throughout this whole thing, Sazed has been a really really interesting character, but his whole journey is extremely cool and wraps up perfectly, I think. His whole struggle with faith, going back and forth, and finding out what he believes, and then ultimately coming to understand that he was wrong about believing in Vin. Like he should have believed in Vin, obviously, just as a good friend, but finding out that he was wrong, that she's not the hero of ages and that he actually is, was such a super awesome moment when he's on the like battlefield at the end and harnessing all the power. It's really really cool. I love the idea of the different stashes hidden everywhere, and they had to go throughout the land and find all the different caverns, basically following the breadcrumbs that the Lord Ruler had left for them in case he passed away, and now Ruin is out and everything's going crazy. I really thought that it was a really cool idea. But I think my favorite part of the whole book, I mean, besides the ending, obviously, because it was super satisfying, was what Sanderson does with Spook. Spook is like a character that kind of doesn't do a whole lot in the first book because he's just like a kid. He's just like a street urchin that he just hangs around, and watches out for people. And he does a lot more watching in the second book, but you can tell he's kind of angsty. Um, But that third book, when he just kind of becomes this his own thing and starts taking a lot of agency, and the idea of his character burning so much tin so that he can see so clearly that he has to wear a blindfold all the time because he can still see through the blindfold. He sees that clearly. um oh man, it's so BA. And his whole thing where he gets pierced with ruin, and yeah, throughout Urto, it's just incredible. What he did with Spook was really, really special. um and then wraps it all up. uh Literally, I feel like wraps up almost every single loose end at the end of the book. Ties everything together in a really neat bow that I was super duper excited to experience. So I mean, geez, I ended up listening to most of it just at work or while I was walking, and the narrator they have for the audiobook does a really, really good job too. I think that he brings a lot to the table, so good job on Brandon Sanderson for hiring whoever that guy is. But anyways, if you have not and you watch this whole thing, it's still worth experiencing. I spoiled most of it, but not all of it. Anyways, I mean, gosh, it's just so good. And I think that Sanderson's writing style, where it's not super flowery, it's not super hard to understand. Some people on the internet will criticize him for that, and I just think that that's good. Why say lot word when few do trick? All right, you know what I mean? Because it didn't affect how I understood the story. It didn't affect how I imagined it in my mind. In fact, it probably just made it more clear. And so, I don't know. I have to say that I have been converted. I mean, I wasn't like not. I didn't ever think that Brandon Sanderson was a bad uh author, but I do think that he's a very good one now. That's about it. Tell me what you think of Mistborn down below. I'm probably going to end up starting Mistborn Series 2. I don't think I want to get into The Way of Kings. That's just intimidating to me. That's a big freaking book to read. Um, Maybe later. Maybe once I'm done with my own book, then I'll reward myself with the Stormlight Archives. I don't know. I don't know if that's a reward. Maybe, maybe not. Anyways, thanks for liking and subscribing. I'm Noah. I like books. Deuces.